on the slate.
Okay, you're good.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. I know. Well, I
Okay,
still
let's
sort
call the
of
meeting
bad.
to order. I have 6:32.
I think it's 7:32.
I'm thinking Central Time.
There you go. She spent so much time in Chicago, you're.
Public comment, I don't think there's anybody here.
I've got a
We have
correction on the agenda, though.
What's that?
Uh-oh.
I have a correction on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
Under treasurer, we're going to take off the last income and expense and write balance sheet from June 15th, 2022. So instead of saying income and
Oh,
expense.
That's gonna be
balance
balance sheet. Okay. Then why don't we start with the approval of the minutes?
I circulated them to everyone. Did anyone have any questions or comments?
If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve them as submitted.
Well,
Okay. Okay.
I can second.
Amanda
Oh,
and Lynn. Treasurer Lynn.
do we vote?
Oh, yeah, I guess we should.
Just saying.
In the grades. Okay, all in favor? Anybody opposed? No. Okay.
Okay, on the treasurer's report, the only thing is Jill sent out separately the balance sheet, just in case you didn't get it. I have an extra copy. Okay, so we have the financial report for May 5th through June 20th.
Can I just, I have 45 minutes, so
Okay.
I'm not trying to cut you off, Lynn, but if we're going to talk about the budget, I got to leave at about 7:15 my time. So I just, if I can contribute to the budget, that's the timeline that I have. So just throwing that out there in terms of agenda.
So we'll be quick. Did anybody have any? I submitted, you've got it in your packet. The expenses, there was nothing out of the ordinary. I tried to detail some of the bigger expenses. Did anybody have any questions about the treasurer's report? Fine with me if
Yeah.
somebody wants to make a motion to
Motion.
accept the
Accept
off
the-
warrant.
The whole treasurer's report.
Well, we
You
have to
can't
do
do
it.
that all at the
same time.
We have to-
Try and check.
We-
Try and. No, I'm just
Accept the
kidding.
off warrant.
We accept the off warrant. That's the first one.
that's Tammy.
Yeah.
And who's second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Okay,
The warrant.
Are we doing all in
we're
favor?
gonna vote for all at once.
Oh, you don't, you want,
No, that's fine.
Okay,
All in favor? Anybody opposed? No.
okay, the warrant, everything was fine. Nothing out of the ordinary.
There's no payrolls on this one?
The payrolls are on off warrant.
Okay, I just
There
want to make
were-
sure, like,
3 payrolls,
yep, and,
two
okay.
it says right there, 2 payrolls, I think. Yeah, 2 payrolls and 3 different comps.
Okay. I just want to make sure. Yeah.
Good point.
Other than that, I have nothing else on that.
So this one, just so you know, the off warrant did also include the COVID bonus. That, of course, came out of her, but was paid out of
What was
operating.
bottom line on COVID bonus anyway?
41,000. Okay, thank you. Anything on the warrant?
And this time the motion is to authorize me to sign the warrant in the amount of whatever it is.
$15,380.66.
Feels good to have confidence in these
I
numbers.
have such
again.
confidence,
I will make the motion.
and I will second it.
All in favor?
The profit and loss years, 45% over. Average, there wasn't really anything. Nothing that was worrisome. Everything is really moving along. I mean, big thing is we're switching trash and recycling companies starting in July, and that will result in a savings. So,
Nice. That's always good.
mhm.
Yeah.
In July.
Starting in 7/1, yep, 7/1/22.
Is that Twin States? Is that moving to Twin States? or-
Twin Bridges, Twin
Twin Bridges.
Bridges.
Is that
Twin Bridges.
I see more and more.
Yeah, I see them everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, except. I went with them 2 years ago. I got my free 3 months and then $29 a month, which is now up to $40.
There you go.
We called County Waste and said Twin Bridges offered us a better rate. They said, what'd they offer you? I was like $15 in the first 3 months or in like 3 months, whatever. And so they're like, we'll give you 10 a month and 6 months free. And I was like,
Wow.
okay.
10 a month.
It's 10 or 15 forever. Like they haven't touched it, County Waste.
How long?
It's been years now. It was like when Twin Bridges first started showing up.
Well, I'm gonna have to switch again.
County Waste should switch it. They increase it every year with us.
So in any case, that's, so profit and loss, and then under the balance sheet, the big thing was that we transferred funds from her account to the operating fund to cover the COVID bonus, which was paid on June 10th. Nothing else really significantly of note on the balance sheet. We'll entertain motions, or you will entertain
I'll
motions.
entertain a
Approve
motion
the-
to approve the financials as presented.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? Anybody opposed? No. Okay, carries.
Wonderful, thank
Look at
you.
this. 6 minutes.
Yay, we
That's
did
a
it.
record.
Okay,
Shay, you have a way of moving the meeting along.
thank
I
you.
appreciate that. Thank you.
There was compensation study. I'm looking what we could skip till later.
You can skip me till later.
Yeah, I was gonna do director later. Admin had no meeting, service, no meeting because we did budget and compensation,
There's really not much to.
In budget. we're
personnel
done.
memo.
Yeah, that one.
So on the personnel memo, we have 2 resignations, I believe.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. So we have a resignation of 2 sad resignations. Elizabeth Putnam, who is the head of adult services, and she is leaving us for bigger and better things. And Kyle is retiring building
You
maintenance.
probably
worker
can't hear
part-time.
you. Can you hear her? Or maybe,
Can you hear me okay? Yeah.
Yes, again, yes.
Okay, so Kyle's leaving August 29th. Elizabeth is leaving July 11th. Asked Catherine Snow, who is one of our adult services librarians. She actually started out in the children's department, and she has agreed to take this on. And so she's stepping up. There's no civil service list or anything, so
To
she's
take
just having a
Elizabeth's job.
so we've already made that. We've already done that internally and worked with civil service. Pending your approval, and they will overlap officially on one day, but they're starting a little bit of training now, working together. So that will leave a librarian 1 full-time. Once we do this, we'll have an opening there. And there's a provisional appointment of Maeve Morley, part-time library clerk, and she started at the beginning of June. So right now we have 1 position that's been posted already for the building maintenance worker because we had that information sooner, and we are working on a posting for the librarian 1 position. so we can fill that as soon as possible.
So is Catherine moving into Elizabeth's salary as well, or is that,
She's moving into that salary band.
which,
But
so
it would be based on her years of service, Catherine's. So it'd probably be lower than Elizabeth, because she's not been here as long. Wonderful. That's all.
Okay,
do you think it would be easier to fill a librarian one than?
part-time is harder than full-time.
It's harder to fill a part-time position than a full-time librarian position. I think we'll have less disruption on our staff to fill the full-time librarian one than a department head position at this
Do
point.
you have any part-time librarians who might be interested or not?
Not at this point. The one part-timer that we wanted to make full-time
Mhm.
accepted a librarian 2 position at another library already.
Okay.
Okay.
I will make a motion to accept the personnel Memo.
as submitted,
as submitted.
second.
Katie,
All in favor? Anybody opposed? No? Okay.
Actually,
What's
Jill, can I
going
ask a quick question about this, the hourly rate on the buildings and grounds? Do you have leeway? Because I think it was what, like 1360 or something like that?
1326, and I've already had somebody complain.
Okay, because yeah, we have summer interns that are making 15, and I'm hoping you have leeway in terms of, hourly rate, because I'm be surprised if somebody would take that rate, but that's my perception, not necessarily a hard fact.
I hear you.
Thank you. Don't have leeway now, but I might be coming back to the board if we need to.
Yeah.
With that.
Okay, should we?
Move on.
What I see now is, we got some policies that we could push those. Why don't we, no liaisons are here.
do we have to have a motion for the annual report?
Probably
we could
did
do
that
it.
already.
Did you do it while I was gone?
I think we
I know.
did.
Did you? Oh,
Well,
good.
maybe not, but we
I
could.
thought
do
we,
it. But when- I don't remember it in the minutes. We did something, we talked about it. I don't know if we actually. But we could do it after we did the budget, I suppose.
we have.
Well, we haven't.
We'll have
You'll have a
six.
quorum.
We'll have enough.
We'll have a forum, so we can do it afterwards.
Attention library patrons, the library is closing in 15 minutes. Please start to think about bringing your items up to the circulation desk to check out. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay, so, under the new business, we have our budget draft presentation. This is the budget that the budget committee has put
Oh, no.
together.
oh, he's there.
Basically ultimately for board approval, that this is what we're going to present, a budget that we will present to the public in August. At that time, we will vote for what we will present to the public in September. This is just step one. In that, this budget was not developed until Sunday late afternoon, and Jill actually, I think, put it very nicely for us and sent it out Sunday night. I am not anticipating asking the board to necessarily vote on a budget today. If I were not in this chair and in any other chair in this room or where Shay is sitting, if a budget came to me that late and I didn't have a chance to look at it, I would not vote for it. So I'm not going to ask people to vote today unless for some miraculous reason, we all come together and say, we're good with it and vote. So we will have to have one more meeting sometime in the next 2 weeks to vote on the budget that we will present to the public. I expect it to be at most maybe a 15-20 minute meeting, but we will have to do that. That'll be the only subtopic on it. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Lynn, our treasurer,
Okay,
to lead us through what we've got.
okay, and Jill has it up there as well, and I don't know if you have a copy of it with you, Shay, but
I do.
first, do you have a copy? Okay.
I have an electronic copy. I downloaded the Excel spreadsheet.
Perfect. Okay, first I want to thank the committee, Michael, Mary, Cammie, and Katie, and Jill for helping to put this budget together. And thanks to the compensation committee, because we really did use a lot of the information that came out of the compensation committee to help us make our decisions when it came to the salaries and benefits. I don't have to tell all of you, it's been a challenging year to do a budget. We've had inflation, which has led to increases in all the supplies and materials and books and everything else, but we also are seeing huge wage inflation everywhere, more than we've seen in years and years and probably decades and decades. In addition to that, and we don't have the full report of the compensation committee, but we certainly learned a lot from it. And what we did was we identified several positions that were paid. What we said as a benchmark was less than 90% below the average of comparable libraries in the area. So we found several positions, especially part-time, which gets to what you're talking about, Shay, especially part-time positions, which were significantly, inequitable when compared to salaries for those positions at comparable libraries. On top of that, like we thought last year when we put the budget together that this was our transition year and we're going to be in this post-COVID world. And now a year later, we're realizing there isn't a post-COVID world. And a lot of the changes that we've seen are still evolving, and I think they will continue to. So those were some of the challenges we faced. What did we come up with? Well, we came up with 3 budget options for next year. The estimated tax cap will be 3.41%. So the first budget we proposed, the first column, which is in a kind of peach color, salmon color, is what the budget would look like if we stayed at the tax cap at 3.41%. At that level of funding, and I'm sure if you've taken a look at the bottom line, the budget we proposed is not fundable at that level of funding. Unlike schools and others where there is no other source of funding really of any significance to support the library operations. And in this climate, 3.41% just does not really cut it. So we needed to either cut the budget by 48,000 or take reserve funds, the amount of 48,000 to balance the budget. So then we looked at others that are above the tax cap, and we looked at 5% tax levy and a 6% tax levy. The assumption being we're talking about 5% for East Greenbush taxpayers and the same amount for Skodak taxpayers for both of those. At the 5%, there's still a $15,000 gap in funding. And, we're going to talk through all the specifics, and then we'll have lots of time for conversation because I know everybody has a lot of questions. At the 6%, we are, it balances. There's actually a small overage, which would be applied should that amount be the amount that's approved, applied to areas that we've had to cut more than we would have liked to cut. There were a few overarching themes, I'd say, that the committee looked at. The first one that I really feel is important to draw your attention to, this is the first budget we've prepared that is all-inclusive. For many years, I don't even know how many, but predating me, maybe predating you, there's been a chunk of money, both capital money and gift and grant money, which primarily comes from the Friends, that always was approved outside this budget, never included in the budget. There are pros and cons for that. I mean, one of the pros is if you have a huge capital expense, it can really make your budget look dreadful, like it can really influence the budget year to year. But what it also does by not having all the funding in one place is you kind of miss the total picture. What does it cost to operate a library of our caliber in our town? So I have been putting, Jill knows I've been pushing since I was with the Friends to do it together. And so this one represents the first budget that shows all income and all expenses in one place. So all by itself, that bumps up the number by about $90,000, because when you look at that, when you add all of these things that have been funded in different ways as capital expenses or as Friends grants, it really does add up. So that's something I think is important to remember. So the numbers are going to look really higher just based on that alone, plus everything else that is going on. So that's number one. Number two, and Jill talked about this in the memo when she submitted it, we made a decision to propose a budget that goes fine-free. Obviously, the board would have to make that decision, but we did not put income from fines in this budget. And that's it would have probably been about $11,000. It's been dropping every year. And now that we have automatic renewals, we expect it will continue to drop, and more libraries in the area are going fine-free, which means that will also continue to drop, because if you drop your book off at a fine-free library, that fine is not going to be collected. So that's just to know that money is not in this budget as income. So that's another hit of about $11,000. Thirdly, we had the compensation committee, and the goal of the compensation committee was really, let's look at where we are, how we compare with libraries in the area, if there was such a thing. And, the committee did a lot of work, and we felt for that reason, it was really important to take those findings and apply them. So more than most years, we really tried to look at what are the salaries and benefits and how do they compare and what do we need to do? So there is, without question, a lot of focus on staffing and on salary and benefits in this particular budget. So we did a number of things. One is the committee felt strongly that there was a need to add steps to all positions, except we held out what we would consider the two highest admin positions, which are the director and the business and operations manager. But every other position, whether full-time or part-time, would now have steps. The same steps,
Attention library patrons.
except substitutes.
Closing in just
Substitutes would not.
5
Hi,
minutes.
Carol.
This is your final
Substitutes would not have steps. You're right.
Thank you.
Okay, so that was one. And the other was that thing about equity that I spoke of. And so the other piece was really saying every single position is going to be brought up to a level of 90% of the average. And I mean, it's a little bit of a complicated formula, but the average of that position, like positions in comparable libraries. And that did affect a number of positions, especially every part-time position. Because we've really not, just the way we've been compensating them at a fixed rate for the last several years. So that was another piece. We also proposed reclassifying 2 staff positions. One would be Marion's position, and head of CERC, to move her to a more appropriate, and the other is Selena position. So we proposed that. We also proposed adding one full-time admin assistant position and a half-time library assistant position, and a 3% COLA for all staff. So there are lots of changes in the salary, and it shows when you look at the bottom line. And I've got some details on that when we get along. In addition, we retired the bond a few years ago, and we have tried really hard, now that the bond is retired, to make sure we dedicate a chunk of funds that we can use to rebuild all of the capital reserve and operating reserve accounts, operating contingency accounts, so that we are in a financial position to support anticipated large capital repairs, roof, the skin of the building, and any shortfalls in operating that could come. So we have $100,000 in the budget for that purpose as well. So those are the overarching themes that we considered when putting together the budget. Now I can take you through this, but maybe, so as you can see, we've got the 3 columns, and on the income side, just so you know, income is identical in the 3 different models, except for the tax levy. Okay, so we made the assumptions, we abolished the line of general fines, there being any income from fines. We kept interest income quite low, anticipating that while it's going up, it's not going up so much that we are likely to see a vast increase in interest income. I told you before, we propose a Skodak rate mirror the East Greenbush rate. We did put in a higher rate of income from Rensselaer County. We generally get had been for the last few years getting $250. This year, they bumped it up to $1,000. But we feel that it's really important that the library really but ask for increased funding, because, based on the way we serve as a real hub for Rensselaer County residents, probably more than most libraries. We serve a lot of North Greenbush residents, Skodak, Nassau, Castleton, Troy. I mean, all over the county, people come to this library for books and services. And so our thought was to really try to go back to the Rensselaer County. We used to get even a larger amount from them than this. Of
8,000 or 9,000.
Okay, 8 or 9. We
Was
used
the
to,
routine until the financial difficulties in the early 2008, 2009, 10 timeframe.
right,
And
so,
then what they did is all the libraries that were special tax districts, they just knocked them out at 0, figuring we could just raise our taxes to get the money back.
so.
A little bit unfair.
A little bit. So we also thought we would make the case about moving to fine-free, and that number kind of reflects the loss from going fine-free. So that was put in there.
It's 8 p.m. and the library is now closed. We reopen tomorrow at
The other thing
10
you're gonna
a.m.
see-
Thank you. See you then.
On the income side is you're going to see the amount for, it says friends, restricted grants, non-restricted, et cetera, as well as gift and grants at the top. So that reflects what I said before, the integration of gift and grant and reserve funds into the budget. So this would be kind of what we would expect to spend, and really in a lot of cases what we have been spending, but it's never been showing up in the budget before. Okay, so that's the expense side. I mean, just so you see the proposed total library revenues, if we stayed at 3.4%, the total revenue, which is right there, total library halfway down the page, 2.278 million at the 3.41%, and then it's 2.311 million. If we went to the 5% tax levy, and it's 2.332 million if we went up to the 6% tax levy. Each percent we go up raises the income by about 21,000 or thereabouts. Okay, so that's the income side. Quite a big jump, but we've talked about what some of the jump is, the gift and grant and reserve piece, and some of it is all the other things that we feel are critical to include in this next year's budget. So where are we in terms of expenses? There are a couple of categories where we anticipate we will see a significant increase in expenses next year. One of them is technology and communications. It happens that we have a few multi-year contracts that are coming, well, one at least, it's coming due, which is called Meraki, and it's $6,500, and it's just going to be due this year. We have a few others as well. We're proposing to replace a disc cleaner, which is very widely used by staff every day, and that's about a $1,500 cost. These multi-year renewals, we have two. The one from Meraki is $6,500, and then another for this company called Azure Active is another $4,500. So that's a big chunk of money. We have proposed to upgrade fiber speed, which will be nearly $8,000 next year. We had hoped to fund security cameras for the library at the cost around $4,000 or so, but we did take that out in the end. So that is not in the budget for this year. Keep in mind that while it's a big increase, it's a 44% increase. Some of that is real because there are expenses that are high and, multi-year, but some of it is all that funding that we used to put into it from grants and gifts every year as a routine that we never saw. And that's why I'm a big fan of this, because it gives us a much truer picture of what it costs us to run the library. So it brings us up to about $69,000 and $69,121 for technology and communications. Clearly one of the biggest areas of growth for next year. Programming and planning, what we're doing is really proposing going $3,000 over where we were in 2021. And once again, this is another one of those categories that is greatly funded by gift and grant and the Friends over the years. So while it is an increase, it's really probably more of an artifact than a true increase in amount we're putting into that category. The next category is books and materials, kind of the lifeblood of a library. Let's keep in mind, we're proposing a very modest increase, and it's not what we would love to do, but we think we can make it work. It's a 4.42% increase to $150,885. Once again, a lot of this is that artifact of gift and grant being incorporated in the budget because it was so heavily, these categories were so subsidized by gifts and grants before. But it's important.
In effect, a little bit of a cut.
Oh, there you go. It's a slight cut. So that's it. The next category that's largely increased is facilities. And we knew that going in. I mean, first of all, we have an aging building. It's now 22 years old or 23 years old. And we have needs as a result of this aging building. And then there's inflation. Plus, we're now including construction grant costs in the budget. So that's another way in which it kind of is very large. So we're looking at a 40% increase to $192,506. We anticipate that utility costs will go up about $10,000 for next year. And we've seen, really dramatic increases in waste and recycling costs and in lawn care and snow care, really big increases. And we expect they will continue for next year. We budgeted for repairs to our cooling tower and, not replacement, but repairs. And we've also kind of left enough in there because this year already we've had quite a few repairs already this year. And with an aging building, we're not thinking it will drop for next year. So that's a fairly large increase. The professional services category, that's what we use when we hire consultants. And it's higher than it's been. And it's basically three reasons. One, we are planning next year to do the migration to QuickBooks, and we will need an outside consultant to assist with that. That's about $3,500. In addition, next year, we postponed from this year to next year, the strategic planning process. We would like to hire someone to manage that process, and we expect that consultant would be $10,000. We budgeted that. Finally, we would like to put in place an HR platform, and one of those automated ones you see on TV, HR platforms for staff to use. We don't really have an HR person in the library. And so this would allow, all the people to do vacation requests and all that PTO time, steps, all that sort of thing that relates to pay and time worked, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be a cost of about $6,000. And that honestly is not the bells and whistles version. That's the kind of bare bones version. It'd be about 6. It'd be about 10 for the more all-inclusive version. We are trying, we are proposing a slight drop in the operating because we are proposing to drop from 6 to 4 newsletters per year. Now that people have gotten so accustomed to the digital presence of the library, we're feeling that we can switch back to a 4. It was 4 a year once, went to 6 a year, and probably go back to the 4 a year. And it saves quite a lot of money. I mean, the postage, printing are quite expensive. Human resources and staff development, just proposing to keep that level. And now we get to salaries and benefits. And this is, well, I guess this is the third and without question. I mean, always salaries and benefits are the major expense in a personnel in almost any employment place. And this is not, it's also true here. Okay. As I told you, we made a lot of recommendations. I'm going to kind of give you the ballpark of what they cost. So the salary and benefits recommendation is 1.669 million, which is up 131,000 from the current year budget. So it's a rather significant, around 8% increase. What does that include? We identified several positions that were below the 90% of average salaries. And it will cost $18,278 to bring every single employee up to this level where they are paid at 90% of comparable libraries. I forget the exact number of staff. It was several. I mean, it's 16 or 17 staff. We are not, obviously there are a few staff that actually are above. We're going to hold everybody there harmless. But we want to make sure everybody's at least at a 90%. And why did we pick 90%? I mean, some of it's budgetary, couldn't afford 100%, but some of it is the reality that a lot of our comparable libraries aren't all that comparable. There just aren't a lot of libraries that are
significantly larger.
They're bigger. They have a bigger budget and more staff. And so we felt like by going at 90%, we could kind of reflect the fact that they're kind of comparable, but they're a bit bigger. So we will do that. And we did, by the way, on these categories, we dropped the highest and lowest. And when I say the average, it was the average of all but the highest and lowest to try to get a real sense of this number. So that's an $18,000 cost and change. In addition, most part-time positions here and some full-time positions did not have steps. So for some employees, there are income steps, each one being a 5% increase on the base at 3 years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years, and 15 years. For others, there's not. We feel it's important to either have it or not, and we decided having it was the more important piece. So we propose to add steps to all full-time and part-time positions, but not substitutes. So, the view is a substitute is a whole different animal. And except, as I mentioned before, not the business officer and not Jill's position. And so in addition to that, we would place people in those steps. So, we would create the steps and then we would place them in the steps based on their years of service. So that cost is about $6,700 to do that. So it's not a vast cost in the scheme of things, and we think it will be very helpful. I mean, really a morale boost for people who felt like they're falling behind their coworkers who have a step and they work here and they don't have one. The compensation committee also recommended adding, in effect, longevity by adding a step at 20 years and 25 years. We said maybe in a future year, but there wasn't funding to do that. We also wanted a 3% COLA for all staff. We would love more because honestly, our goal, at one point, we were hoping for as much as 5%, because when you look at where salaries are in the marketplace, they are going up very fast.
And cost of living.
And cost of living. But we stayed with a 3% cost of living, and that alone will cost $88,000 and change. So that's quite a lot of money. The reclassification of the two positions would have a cost of $10,113, but we feel it's really important. This would really put the two employees in positions that are appropriate to their what the work that they do, which right now they're not. In addition to that, we wanted to add two positions. We'd love to add more, but one is a full-time admin assistant to provide some support to Jill specifically. Cost of that is $47,423. And then a part-time library assistant with the cost of $20,000. Now, keep in mind, when I've been talking costs, I'm talking about the salary cost, but each salary cost drives benefit cost, because of Social Security and Medicare and things of that nature. So just so you're aware of that. We would like to appoint Dawn as business and operations manager, but at no change in her salary, because already she's making a higher rate than the person who vacated the position. And we wanted, and then on top of all this, we had 8 staff who are ready for a step. I forget what, so we have a contractual obligation to give them their steps. And that's got a cost of $16,300. So it's a lot, but we felt it was, the whole reason to have a compensation study is to look at it and make some decisions. We felt, maybe next year after strategic plan, the decisions will focus much more on facility, but this year we felt this really represented the great work of the committee. Now we get to the last line, and it's capital. We set aside $17,000 in capital kind of reserve that allows us to do match and things of that sort. Should we apply for a construction grant? And we also set aside, as I mentioned, $100,000 because we are still trying to replenish our accounts, our reserve accounts from the time when we had the bond and money was so tight, we actually had to pull back. I'm going to finish by saying, what does it mean for the East Greenbush taxpayers? 2022, the tax rate was 91 cents per thousand in assessed value. So a $250,000 assessed value home, that household was paying $227.50. That's right now for this year. With a 3.41% budget option, that $250,000 home, their rate of increase would be $5. It would cost them $5 more, $232.50. The 5% rate would cost them $7.50 more for that household of $250,000 assessed value home. And the 6% would be a $10 increase. So we're not talking about a vast increase in how much it would cost a household, but it is an increase. I mean, the biggest thing to understand is if we as a board wish to approve any budget which exceeds the tax cap, we must have a supermajority of the board approve it. So a minimum of 5 people must approve it if we're going to go above the tax cap. So with that, I guess I would entertain questions,
I think the
discussion.
first thing we should do, Shay's time is
Yeah.
running
Yeah.
out, so
Oh.
let's get Shay.
Shay,
I'll just, my comment is that I think a couple things running through my mind. One, the reserves, I'm not as tied to this idea of putting 100K aside in the reserves. I think that's that would be a great choice, but the idea of going over the tax cap in this year, as you compare it to the school district putting out a 0% tax increase, which was driven by the fact they got a lot of COVID federal money. We can't do anything about that. My concern is, I've said this before, 2,000 to 3,000 votes in the East Greenbush school district budget votes. We get 250 to 300. We run on a much thinner margin of potentially riling up a group when they see a 5 or 6% increase, and that we have to clearly annotate to the community that it's over the tax cap, and thus, we need that support. I don't think it's worth $48,000 of risk or in budget shortfall to not plan to either draw it from reserves. If you look at the 2021 actual, right, we ended up with a $36,000 net revenue. I'm not implying that we will see that same amount, but whatever we might see this year, go towards, offsetting that 48K. I know we've talked about this the last 2 years. I think when Bob was the treasurer and then Lynn last year, I want to be able to defend this to a community that if they see that we have, I think say you took the 100K and you put it in reserves, we'd be over, I think 625 in total reserves between capital and operating. That's over 25, almost 30% of our operating budget. A school district, again, I use that as a comparison, it's 4% of your budget. If somebody, and we're trying to plan for, a roof, I believe a parking lot being redone. I still don't know what those costs would be. I don't know what our timeline for doing those are. So trying to present that story to a community that sees call it a 30%, reserve fund compared to operating budget, and asking for a tax rate above the tax cap, I don't think it's worth the risk, because I believe if we're voted down, we go to a 0% tax increase, or we go back to what our budget was this year. I don't think it's worth the risk of $48,000 when we are budgeting for 100K reserve input. So my opinion is that in this environment at this time, I don't think it's worth the risk to budget for a higher reserves contribution. If we have a plan, I'd love to hear it. I know that I've asked for this previously, is what is our expected cost for a parking lot redo, for the roof repair? I know what we are euphemistically referring to as potential operating shortfalls. And if that happens, right, that's a 300K number plus, or, definitely plus, I think 330 is in the budget. But I just don't think it's worth the risk of getting, all you need is 250 no votes, right? You don't need 1,000 or 1,500 no votes as you need in the school district. All you need is 250 people who get riled up. And this environment is not one that I think we want to test, because the risk of going to a 0% increase and having to do, 150K in budget cuts. Am I right on that? 209, 250,
Yeah, it was,
or 326 from 2137. So, almost 200K, right? Am I right on that?
yeah.
It's not that's not worth it. That's a going to risking a contingent budget that has 0% increase. I'd rather not allocate in my opinion, over allocate to the reserve fund. If we have operational surplus that we can then, whatever that is, that's obviously put that towards reducing the budget shortfall, and the remainder come from the reserves. But that's my opinion. I think the risk there is too much. So that's my 2 cents.
Can I have 1 minute of, what if, so we need to fix the exterior of the building. $88,000 is what the estimate is. What if?
What's the
how-
exterior? Define, what do you mean
It's
by
the skin,
exterior?
it's called
The
the skin,
outside
it's the
skin of the
stucco
building.
and painting and that whole.
It needs work.
So give me the plan.
I have a quote of 80,000 sitting here to do that, which I really wanted to do this year.
So
But
what
we
if
didn't
we?
talk
put
about
it-
that last year. We didn't
Right.
talk, we talked about a parking lot and a roof last year for,
And the road,
And the road,
and the road,
and the road.
is the parking lot a part of the road?
no.
No, because.
Maybe he's thinking of.
We need a plan. We need to have a listing of these things, because now, this is not what we talked about 2 years ago when we were talking about an
Yes,
800. I remember
the list
asking the
has been
question.
same. The list has been the same.
It's
Yes,
called
It's not been
skin
shared.
needs some work.
It's not been
Maintenance,
shared.
The roof, the parking lot, the road, and other things, cooling tower.
So
They-
I
they've
guess
been
my
on it.
question is, I'm just trying to get a sense of what your issue, most significant concern. If we said, okay, we're not going to have a line in the budget that says $100,000 reserve, we are going to identify a $100,000 capital expense that has to do with supporting a 20-year-old building. So maybe it is the roof, maybe it's the skin and the cooling tower. But so then it is an expense that's listed in the facilities budget, greatly increases the facility budget, but you explain it and say, this is what needs to be done. This is our estimate of what it will cost. So in effect, we are preserving the existing reserve fund, because otherwise, you see, we would be spending that money out of the reserve fund and replenishing it at the end of the year. So instead, I'm saying, what if we just flipped it and said, we're going to spend that 100,000 by putting it in the facility budget to specifically cover these expenses? Would you then feel you could go over the tax cap? That's what I'm trying to get at.
I guess I understand what you're saying, Lynn, right? In terms of, the allocation and how it, appears in to a community, with the budget being presented. What I'm asking is, can we get a list of these capital expenditures that we are thinking, why we are trying to bring up the reserves so that we can account for these? I'm saying that the environment is not conducive for an over the tax cap budget. That's my feeling. So whether we put it in reserves or in, the facilities operating budget, I get the difference, right? But I'm still trying to figure out if I'm asked, right? Okay, so what is it that the library needs to do, and when does it need to do it, right? So we're talking about now needing to do the exterior skin. I'm not against doing it. I'm not saying that 88,000 is unreasonable, but I would like to know what is the target cost, or believe, at this point, right? And it could change. What is the expected cost or plan for cost, and what is the timeline for doing these projects that we've been talking about? Because we've been talking about the roof for probably since I got on the board, because we were anticipating when the bond, the bond was paid off. But I still don't know when we're planning on doing that. I don't have a sense of what that will cost. So we have $525K approximately. I'm sure that number's not exactly right in reserves right now. What do we need to get to? When we talked about this 2 years ago, I think Bob said something like 800K was the goal. And I remember my reaction of 800K on a $2 million budget. That's 40%. That's going to, if somebody starts paying attention, they're going to say, why do you need that much? Then what's the plan? That's what I want to know is, what are the capital expenditures that we are expecting, like the skin repair, that, that can be argued, this is why we are, this is why we were building up the capital reserves funds. If that argument can be made, okay, but we better make sure, right now my vote would be tax cap, the tax cap number. If we're gonna go to 5%, we better have the friends making calls to people in August so that we can make sure we get 300 or 400 people to show up that we can trust to be yes votes. That's where I'm going is I think if we go over the tax cap, we better be extremely proactive to cut off the guy that Michael, that came to the meeting that was angry, and him getting getting a group set up, East Greenbush taxpayers against the library, the library budget. I don't think we want to risk that, because the risk to our budget is $200,000. That's a big gamble to be putting on. So that's
I
my.
don't think it's $200,000.
It's
Can I
pretty
ask you a
close.
question?
It's a
So
zero,
if-
you go to a zero increase, I believe, correct?
2278513.
I thought it looks like 2,137,375 for our 2022 revised budget. And we're saying 2,326,851. So that's a little under two, so 180, 190.
We're talking, you gotta look at the tax levy numbers.
No, he's looking at.
I'm talking about the budget. You go back.
8 or 9% increase. The tax levy is the number that you work on.
But he's saying if it lost, if we lost,
you-
it'd be on last year's
We get
budget.
last year's.
Which is 2,137.
375.
Right. That's a $180,000, $190,000 difference. So that's a 4 times X.
The tax levy, ultimately, the tax levy is what stays the same.
So you're
Okay.
saying it's not less.
It's not, it's what you're raising by taxes stays the same.
Okay,
So
so
if the
that,
budget gets voted no, what happens?
Yeah, that's my
The
question.
tax levy basically is fixed at what it's at.
Meaning, what does that mean in terms of numbers compared to last year's budget?
We won't change, and we have had taking money that is outside the budget and now putting it in. So it's a huge change. The reality is the vote on no, the tax levy would go, let's say the highest one is 6% is 1,876. And in 22 is 1,770. It's $100,000.
no, if the vote is no on a budget, you revert to your previous year's. You're saying
Okay,
tax levy.
Then we're gonna go to the previous year's budget and pull out the things that we put in from those other off-budget things. We'll
So,
go right back to operating the budget the way we did.
So he's
Is it-
saying you're gonna take out the 90,000 of gift and grant and capital. He's right. The net is 100,000 because of this 180,000 increase. Half of it was kind of artificially created by gift and grant and capital
So
being
you
in
go to
there.
the
So it's
levy.
gonna be
You gotta
100,000,
deal with the levy number,
But
is the
still,
one
it's a
that
lot.
stays the same.
right?
so it's a 2X bet. We're making a 2X bet on a $48,000 shortfall versus a $100,000 shortfall if it's a no vote. Is that accurate? Is that an accurate assessment of it or description of it?
So you're saying, I don't get betting, so I'm not a bad one to ask about the 2X bets.
I'm
I
saying
don't even understand over and under.
Okay.
tax cap number, we have a $48,000 shortfall. If
Mhm.
we go over the tax cap, that budget is voted down, then we are facing a $100,000 shortfall.
Yes,
Is that a right? an
that is
accurate-
correct. That is
Okay,
accurate.
so that's where I'm saying is,
100,000 from the 6%.
risk it.
that's what I'm saying is that's the risk we're taking if we go over budget or over the tax cap. So,
I understand that. And also historically, we're passing budgets at a very high rate.
I'm not disputing that, Michael.
Next step is when the tax cap started, you cannot maintain this library on 3% per year. You cannot do it. So you just have to plan to shrink it down. I think you need to get the town used to the fact that it is more. And we have done it 3 or 4 times, exceeded the tax cap.
I know that. I know that. Not in an environment where we have 8.5% inflation. That's my point. That's my point in saying this year, to me,
Okay.
this year is a challenge to do that. I said
Fire drill?
So I have to leave anyway, so I can go to dinner. But that's my thinking is we need to assess that. We need to assess that risk because you're right, Michael, historically, and I've been on the board when we voted to go over the tax cap, but we did not do that in an environment where there's 8.5%, 9% inflation. That's my concern.
So your vote is yes at tax cap, no at anything above.
Right. If we're going to have discussions from this meeting forward, at this point, my vote would be the tax cap. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. I got to get out of here before the
Thank
bill.
you, Shay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Shay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Okay, so if, as Katie said, if the budget fails and the vote, what happens? Like, can you explain it from like,
We technically go back to the previous year,
so you
which
can't,
includes the previous year's tax levy.
but if the tax levy increased, like the percentage increased, does that's what I was trying to figure out, what you saying, like,
What
so,
happened is that we have income that is not steady, not normal, and so on, that has not been part of the budget.
Mhm.
Okay, in the past. For instance, we do replace the carpets. We do that this year. We always pull that money, we put money into the capital reserve, and when we do something, we pull the money out of the capital reserve.
Mhm.
When we replaced the heat pump, we had a heat pump in the last year we replaced. I said, Jill, that money comes out of capital reserve. So it's sort of outside the budget. And we try to keep the capital reserve, which really started when we underspent on the building. We ended up having money left over. And that's where a chunk of the capital is.
So sorry. So I think I'm wondering the same thing as you. So if the budget is voted no, then the budgetary amount is $2,137,375. Is that absolutely correct? Or is that able to be manipulated according to some number like a levy or something?
Well, the levy won't change. The big number, we've had these discussions for years, what are we really voting on? What you're really voting on ultimately is the levy.
But I'm not asking that. I'm asking if the budget fails, is our budget for 2023, $2,137,375. That's the number. That's
If that's what-
Right.
If that's what we voted on last year, that's what the
Yeah,
number is.
that's the question we were trying to ask.
That's okay.
That's
Okay.
the budget.
That's what,
And
that's
the
what we
levy
did.
number that's in there is the one that has to stay.
Okay.
And I understand what Shay's saying about, like a small group can be very vocal. And it can, it's not a lot of people who vote on the budget. It's not a lot. It's like less than 300, 250 or so. But we've historically had a very good support. I mean, it was like 4-1 in the last few years voted for the budget. I mean, it's not even close. It's not like even 60-40. It's like 80-20.
Right. Well, I think Shay's concern though is like, there's people like me in the community who, if you increase the budget by 52%, I just blindly vote yes, because I love the library and I come here and I care about it. And I think a lot of the people who come in and vote yes feel the same way. I don't think they're looking at the numbers. I don't think they're paying attention to the fine details, because this is a resource for the community and they appreciate it. So they took the time and effort to come out and vote in the first place. However, I think there are members of the town where you see signs on the lawn, you see things painted onto the cars. And I think that if you do something that is incendiary to one of those people and they decide they want to go somewhere with it, people may listen. They might be able to rile people up. And when I was teaching in Bethlehem many years ago, their budget got voted down. And I understand that there's a difference between a school budget and a library budget. However, the community felt the effects of that budget going down for years to come. And it was the fact that they had to operate on a smaller budget than they were anticipating that they had planned for. But then it was also hard to pull out of that rut. Like once it goes down once, now you have to worry about that for years to come. And what are the implications that happen as a result of that? So I think that what Shay is saying is that it's not that he's opposed to going over the cap. And I would agree. I just don't know if this is the climate or the timing to do that. And of course, since everyone else's costs are going up, so are the libraries, so are ours. So it makes sense. However, I just don't think this is the time you want to poke the bear and take a chance.
But I mean, I would draw your attention to the fact that even at 6%, it's a $10 increase per house.
I completely understand that. And I completely agree with you. And I have absolutely zero problem with it, but I'm not talking about the me's of the world. I'm talking about the people who are already annoyed. Like I've had people, but long before I was on the board, when my kids were little and I would come for story hour and I took full advantage of this resource, I would have people say to me, ugh, but the taxes, the school taxes, the library taxes. And I would be like, but we're, taking advantage, whatever. There are people out there. Those people had families too. People have a different standpoint. People don't like taxes. So it doesn't matter to those people that it's $10. It matters to those people that you increased it and you made them mad. And I think it's a completely reasonable amount of money. I just think it's risky. The
Here's
optics of it.
a question that I have. Since the 3.41 is a shortfall of 50,000, rounding up $50,000. What if this would probably increase that as well, but cut the reserve to 50,000?
The worry is, especially because of the salary, the way that, we've really looked to create an equitable salary structure and give Jill some extra support that I think many of us around the table have felt she needs, and the library needs. We can't sustain it because you can't keep going into reserves because because this money came out of the bond payment, and already we used to pay $250,000 for the bond, and we've already basically eaten into 150,000 of it, and we tried to hold 100,000, saying this money will go into reserves, but there's just no place else. So within a year or two, you literally couldn't support the staffing, probably, if you did that. I mean, I'd be really concerned.
The intent was when the tax cap came in, very quickly you can figure out you cannot sustain this library on 3% increase per year. In a school district, when you look at it, the tax cap, 3% is only on 40 or 50 or 60% of the money that they got coming in. They got state aid, they got other stuff, other sources of income. So it's really half as much. Here, the 3% hits us on 95% of our income. And you cannot sustain it. And especially in this time of interest, I think actually the opposite, that when we're looking at 8-10% inflation, those are legitimately increased costs that we have, and the explanation should go out. What we did back in, I think the tax cap came in 12 or 14, Cuomo instituted that. What we did is we worked to try and stay within the tax cap. We could not do it every year. Every once in a while, we had a year we couldn't do it. We voted and we exceeded it and the budget passed. But it got to the point where we knew the bond was going to be finished. It was $290,000. And that we basically would have. Now, if we decide, and in a sense, Amanda's suggestion is one way we can go. We will have spent in less than 3 years, we will have spent everything but 50,000 of the 290.
What do you mean?
Well, we've incorporated it into the
What we
budget.
did is, in the 3 years leading to the bond being paid off, we took money from our capital reserve and used it for operating to offset and keep the taxes at closer to the tax cap. Knowing that when we got there, a portion of the bond money would have to go to that. It was about $50,000.
But right now, we have about 550,000 in
Of which-
reserves, correct?
Of which 300, I asked Jill, operating this library is about $150,000 a month. 300,000 is to operate January and February because we don't get our money till February. See, we're on a calendar year, but really for our expenses, there's always 2 months that we have to pay for.
Yeah, it's about 100.
So you
So
got,
everything from January and February comes out of the reserves,
Well, and then it's, it doesn't.
Essentially.
but then it's repaid
Yes.
right back in.
it's.
So it really,
It's kind of a wash.
yeah, it has to be there for January, February, but then it's immediately
You need that float.
replenished.
So that float money's gotta be there. So what we did is, we basically stole from reserves to keep the operation going in, for the 3 years prior, saying, okay, immediately 50,000 or 60,000, whatever it was, we did over several years. We actually even had the Friends. The rule on the Friends was always, they were supplemental things, grants from the Friends, not operational. And we went and we had a long heart-to-heart with Mary and Lynn, who were running the Friends at the time, that we really wanted them to kick in for a couple of years, that we needed this to make it work. Knowing that when we paid off the building, 60,000 of the 290 would immediately cover those costs because they're recurring costs. Operational costs are the recurring costs, they're not one shots. Then we've eaten into it further and we're proposing, we had a plan to do it over 6 or 7 years. Now we're doing it over 3 years. And in the other thing you have to think about, if you're used to increases on that order of magnitude, so that you're taking an extra $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 a year and putting it towards operations. How are you going to cut that back when that money's gone all of a sudden to 3%? And stay with that logic. And in my mind, what we have to do is our responsibility is that this library can be sustained for the future. And part of that is trying to take care of the maintenance items on the building till you're ready for a real building project. And then you go to the voters for it. But it's never as nice to just sort of add on, and that's popular when you're gonna just either add on or just do renovations compared to building a new building and having a whole new facility. So the support level, I don't know if it'll be there. We had over 900 yes votes when it was time at the building. And so the real key was to try and just take the reserve money a little bit at a time, shifting to operating, so it didn't distort it. And, here, what we're looking at, you look at some of these increases, the percentages are way above tax cap numbers. And once you run out of that, you're into tax cap numbers. That's it. Because I'll have the exact same argument, but I won't be on the board anymore by that time, but I'll have the exact same argument that Shay just put out.
See, and actually, I think you can take what Shay's said and flip it, because I actually think this year people would understand a higher tax cap request because they understand that everything has gone up. I think in some ways it's harder to justify if we were in a recessionary cycle and everything was dropping. I think, if we say it's 6%, I mean, everybody knows everything's gone up 8-10%. So, I mean, the fact that the library it's hard because 6% is the tax levy, not the increase in the budget. But the point is, there's nobody who does anything who doesn't know the impact of inflation on their day-to-day life. And so I think it's reasonable to say, just like you, the library is feeling the pressure of inflation, and having to address it. And so I think that at some level, it's easier to argue to go over the tax cap in a year in which everybody is feeling inflation.
Like, what's one more thing?
It's one more thing.
Everyone's just resigned to the fact and that
$12
it
or $15.
moved.
Right.
Or
Okay.
$10.
I live in the Best Luther Fire District. My taxes for the fire district went up 20% last year and 40% this year. And my fire bill, or the fire department bill, is higher than my library bill.
So, so to me, I hear what's being said, but I just see it a little differently, because I think people will understand an increase because, it's so different. Sure, I was very happy when the school bill came, but I know, just not because I have any inside knowledge, just from reading the papers. They got so much money with COVID. They just got heap loads of money, but libraries got, we had a little bit, it was like $1,700. That was all of the COVID money that came to the library. It was some tiny little bit of money and it's gone. It was that one year. And we don't have the luxury of having other funding that can help.
I think also too, that there was a 0%. That might actually be good because you're not increasing school taxes, but you're not paying the extra that you thought you were gonna pay.
It's not like the 1-2 punch.
Right.
They're not
You're only
getting
getting a 1 punch instead of 2. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm. Right.
A hammer strike instead of,
Two.
my son takes like.
You don't pay anything, right?
I don't pay anything. So all of this is I didn't know about fire department taxes.
Necessarily to say.
Yeah, that went up a lot, so.
You're still living your
Yep.
life and you're still experiencing higher costs for everything. So it's not fair to necessarily, say just you.
No, I don't know.
Well,
how
you
this
pay
stuff works.
because your
perspective.
landlord pays and therefore you will pay. And
Like
it's-
trash costs.
No,
went
I
up.
know a lot of people that
Well,
in apartments and they said your rent's going up and.
Our health insurance went up 15%, not the library's cost,
Mhm.
the staff cost.
Right. Well, I want to say I was on this committee. It was definitely a huge learning experience for me. And I appreciated, the pace of it and the different parts that were explained a little bit more thoroughly for me. And I want to say, I'm sure on behalf of everyone, that was an amazing presentation that you gave to the board about the whole budget. It's really well done and you put a lot of time and effort into that and it was just beautifully presented. And, no one is going to argue that our hearts are here in the library. And we of course want the best and we want it to be a sustainable organization for our community. So I definitely, sitting on the committee, listening to Shay, it's not going to be an easy one. Not an easy one.
So we have to decide how to proceed.
Yes.
Okay, as I see the options are. Charlie, you have anything?
Yeah.
on that? You sit here the whole.
Come on, Charlie, give us something.
No, I echo Kenny's sentiments. It's really interesting to see it broken down like that, and I appreciate the presentation. I think what's really interesting is the numbers here, because that I think speaks the most. And the only, the one kind of piece to add on here that I'd say is you have it at the $400,000 assessed home. I just wonder, maybe for a little bit more of a connection, like, what's the average or the median?
Yes, we talked about that too.
We talked
That's
about
why
that
I
in the committee.
Yeah.
And I said exactly what you
Or
said,
they-
because I think that goes to the upper end. And somebody looked up and they said the median in East Greenbush is now what, 350?
Okay.
Yeah.
But I actually, last year, we
Yeah,
used
we've been looking for a house,
200
but-
when we made the presentation. And that's why when I told you my numbers, I used 250, because I think we could honestly use 250 in East Greenbush, because sure, it may be the median for new sales, but a lot of people bought houses way under.
Can we change that to 300?
We
I
can
think that's
change it to
There's
any number.
300 is, to me, 300, I can divide by 3, add 100 to it, it's easier to do the mental gyration.
Really, I feel like.
From searching though, I feel like 300 is probably good, just from I know that a lot of houses sold before, but there, when we started looking pre-pandemic, there were a lot more houses in the $250,000 range, but they all went for over that.
Yes.
So at this point, once the new sales are calculated, it's gonna be higher.
It's also going to change now with, I'm already seeing it, because I'm looking at houses in California. And it's already changing that with the interest rates.
Right.
Prices are starting to drop.
Oh, fingers crossed, everyone,
Aw.
please.
Because ultimately it's what you can
The
buy.
market can afford.
And it's the interest rates. And then you're looking at 6%, and you all may be thinking that's terrible. I wished my first house I could get 6%. And I was looking at one point at 16%.
But the
Yeah,
houses,
and-
wow, cost.
They didn't cost us.
Oh,
No, that's the other trick.
$200,000 houses at that point.
Oh, really?
250.
When I was-
It was our step up from the first starter home
Oh, all right,
that we
when I
lived
was doing
in
my
for
start.
18 years.
So,
Okay, so we didn't really get Charlie's input.
yeah,
Oh, no,
Do you have any
no, and I think on the
thoughts on?
outreach, happy to help, how we can, from the Friends perspective, for general support for the budget vote.
Do you, every year when it's put together, do you always propose numerous possibilities, or was that unique to this year?
We normally go through a process that includes that. It's
Okay.
normally done in the budget committee, and normally we have a presentation earlier than this.
Gotcha.
With the compensation study, it really sort of pushed us back this time. So it's here now. And, anytime we propose that we might exceed the tax cap, we have to start at the tax cap to see what the impact of that is.
Okay.
Now, our options here today basically are, if we're willing to exceed the tax cap, we have to have at least 5 votes here to do it. And we could do it tonight. I said at the beginning of the meeting, I would only do that. I wouldn't ask for that unless the board said, I think we're set and we can do that tonight. Because this information really didn't come out till Sunday night. And if we don't do it tonight, we do have to have a meeting sometime in the next 2 weeks. The difficulty being, Jill is leaving on Friday to go get married. Then Mary is leaving in a week for 5 or 6 days.
I'm already married, but
Not to get married.
not to get married.
She's leaving for 5 or 6 days for a reunion somewhere down in New Jersey. And then the day that Mary comes back, Lynn is leaving.
And the day Jill comes back.
And the day Jill comes back, Lynn is
Leaving.
leaving for 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Sorry.
So
We can act-
I would say what we would have to do is next week, Tuesday or Wednesday, we'd have to have the meeting.
Can it be over Zoom?
Yes.
Yeah, because if it can be over Zoom, I could do any time. If it's only gonna
Allowed
be
to
15
do Zoom
minutes.
meetings, Jill.
Yeah,
That's
as
still
long
permitted?
as
The public's invited.
the public is invited.
If we're still allowed to do a Zoom meeting, we could do a Zoom meeting, and I don't
Wouldn't this be
anticipate.
like a special
Yes.
meeting?
But you
Yeah.
still have to.
You have to invite
the
them.
public. I mean, especially because it's, well, because anytime it's what, more than 3 or
Yeah.
4.
But think about what's gonna happen between now and
I was
then.
gonna say, what I need to know is what people need to know to make a decision, because I don't see any value in us just waiting a week and then everybody still says, well, I still,
I don't.
I mean, I guess I don't know if we need to take a straw poll, if people
I
need to
think
say
that's what
what
we
they
should do.
need to.
They're prepared to vote.
I'm prepared and have involved in the whole thing. I'm ready to go for the 6% and exceed the tax cap.
All right, so that's your vote.
That's mine.
What is the, I know I was on the committee, but is there a committee preference?
Because last year we decided to recommend one of them
Correct.
instead
But
of,
we never had, because we had our last meeting on Sunday, it was,
Okay.
we didn't have enough of us there
All
that the committee could say. Because,
recommending.
Yeah,
okay,
so we don't have
so you don't
that.
have a
So
recommendation.
we just,
So we individually might have recommendations, but we don't have a group
I
one,
just stated mine.
right?
And mine is the same. I'm ready to go for the tax cap. And I think the argument with inflation being what it is, I feel the same way that Lynn does. But I think this is a ripe time and people would understand. Because I think we're going to just continually underfund the library. So I think this is the time to do it.
I agree.
But in fairness, I've been on the committee too, so.
I think I'm the only one
Katie
who wasn't
hasn't.
on the committee.
Yeah, you and
You and
Katie were
Katie,
not on
no,
the committee.
Katie was on-
I was only able to go to one of the
Oh,
meetings, just
okay.
the way that everything worked out,
That's fine.
unfortunately.
I mean, I did it last year, so I have an idea of how the process of deciding and where to cut and where to go I can understand that, so. I'm comfortable voting today, I don't.
Yeah.
I'm just nervous. I'm not opposed to exceeding the tax cap ever. I think I just feel the opposite, that now isn't the time to ask people for more. So I hear what everyone is saying, and I think this was prepared really well and super informative. And I don't entirely disagree with what's being presented in terms of the 5 or the 6%. I'm just nervous. I'm just nervous about the climate. And I just would hate to see a no vote or rile up the community and create negativity surrounding the library. So
So are you saying you are at the?
I'm not comfortable to vote at 6 yes tonight, no.
But do you feel like
You
you
feel
have
like
enough
you're in a position.
information to make a decision?
I do. I mean, I think just being my first time, I think I'm not as comfortable as everyone else. But I think that I would err on the side of being conservative. Yes, I could vote.
You would vote for
Amanda,
the.
did you?
I didn't state how I would
Yeah.
vote, I said I was comfortable voting today.
Okay. And
Because that was the vote we were doing.
I overshared, sorry.
That's okay.
That's right.
We all share.
That's my first time.
It's okay. I've asked a billion questions this whole time.
I know I was on, I'm nervous too, but I will probably support over the 6%. If it bombs out, then we start cutting and get creative and pivoting and everything else.
Well,
I mean,
I'll tell you, if it bombs out, $100,000 covers it.
all right. Yeah.
That was what my thought line was when what I was thinking I mean, I support increases and I've supported the compensation increases and everything, so I'm perfectly happy
We
with
would
this.
do some cutting if it bombs out,
Or, yeah.
Cutting
The budget items and things.
budget items.
So I guess I don't ever want to vote on something that would not give the staff the compensation that we're saying that they are entitled to and that they deserve. If voting the tax cap meant they're not going to get that, then I wouldn't vote that way. If voting the 6 and then going contingent or something like that would force that to become removed, that would influence my thinking very much.
Well, I would say that my thinking is that if the vote goes down and we go to last year's budget, that we take enough, I don't know that we could do the full shot on the staff. We'd have to find some things to cut, because you can't, in my mind, you can't just say, then if you gave the whole thing and did it, then you would have used up the entire capital fund. You're essentially using that to fund it in 1 year, and you're stuck the next year. You're gone and you're stuck.
I mean, what you have to remember is salary and benefits is 1.7 million, on a $2.2 million budget. So there's no question that
It would impact.
it would
impact
it would
salaries.
have to.
The
I mean, because
6% would.
it's, you know.
If we don't go over the tax cap,
We don't.
it's going to. And one of the things we actually talked about was whether or not we'd be able to do the steps, even though we know, I mean, we know from what we've gathered in the compensation study that staff is underfunded in terms, certain positions are. We're losing part-time people. We're losing full-time people now too, going other places. So
But
go ahead.
that's just happening everywhere.
Everywhere, right.
That's happening everywhere. So
So if we voted and we were to go with the tax cap, we wouldn't automatically, like, I thought Amanda's idea to go less on the reserves was a really good one. We wouldn't automatically do that. We would cut from staff before we'd cut from reserves.
no, we do a mixture of both.
Because the other thing is, if we do that, again, it's a one-shot deal. So if we don't get ourselves up to a position where we can sustain the salaries by taking the reserves to pay something this year, we don't have that next year to use.
So
So
next
what do
year
we
we-
do next year?
We
Or
have
the
But
to-
year
I mean, my
after?
hope is that next year would be a different climate, a better climate, and we could look for more of an increase then.
And it depends how you look at it, because
Mhm.
I'm sort of thinking along with Lynn
Mhm.
and thinkers who say it's very easy to sell more this year because we've been hit with the 8 or 9% inflation factor. So 6%, we're actually keeping it down lower.
And I think, I mean, I feel like I know like the crazies are out there,
Mhm.
but from, I mean, in one of several Facebook groups for East Greenbush and one for Castleton, and never, even with the crazies that are in there, because they're in there, never has anyone said a word against the libraries. It's not like the crazies that they have elsewhere. I think their crazies are focused more on gas prices and things of that nature. But that doesn't mean it couldn't happen, but if there is, I'm just not seeing it in the places where you kind of expect it to crop up a little bit.
This is not a like every time you come to the library, it's your cost goes up.
True, like the gas
This is like
station or
less
the
than a cost
Hannaford
of
for you
And
type
this
thing.
is
one
like,
pizza.
like 10,
For a
like
year.
this,
A
yeah,
bag of
this is like.
cherries.
Just bought cherries too. They were.
That's a really good
It was
one.
like $11.
I know, but I said I want them so bad.
They're down, pick your own at Sam Scott tomorrow
I
or
love
now for
that
cherries,
stuff.
so.
I love
But,
their- Anyway,
you know,
Sorry.
when you make the presentation to the public, clearly, I think the most important thing is you focus on what does it mean to your pocketbook? And even say, you know, like, I mean, I think we have a compelling argument to make. And, you know, our utility costs $10,000 more, you know, for this library. We want to change the airflow for COVID, and that makes it more expensive too, because you bring in more air in the cold winter or the hot summer. It costs more money to run all these machines that keep the temperature at a reasonable place, so.
And the other thing too is, that, you know, options if we ended up having to close the library for an extra day or something to cut costs. We saw what happened during COVID and people had a hard time understanding that we couldn't open the doors. So, you know, I do think that, I think people would get it. I understand what you're saying too. There's plenty of
There's
people
plenty of crazy
around.
around.
A
Yeah.
little bit.
But we can't let them win too. We can't just
We
be
gotta do
afraid
what's
of
good for the
them.
library
It's a
and
little
our
bit like
community.
the board member that was here. I think I told Jill the story before. 30 years ago, when we were trying to build this building. And we initially got shot down for plans, which was my first board meeting. And the vote 2 days later. But we hired somebody to put together a plan for us, how big should the library be? And it was 22,000 square feet, which is what this is. And we were in 2,800 square feet of space. How do you sell that? And I was there and said, we do it in stages. We do 16,000 square feet, 15,000 square feet, and plan in 10 years to put an addition on or something like that. And had a board member that as we were discussing it like this, much bigger numbers, who came and said, you know, we hired a consultant to tell us what to do, and they told us what to do, and I think that's what we do for the public. And he convinced us that night, that's what we did. And this is the result. I don't think we should, I honestly don't think we should decide to do what's right and not be intimidated by the potential crazies. That's reversal.
I would agree, just because I think we have a reasonable budget, a justifiable budget. And, you know, I think we should be bold and say, we have a great library. It's not free. This library is not profligate in its spending. This, you know, we do everything we can, but we want to provide Jill with some support. We would have liked it to be an assistant director. It can't be, but, you know, like at least an admin assistant would be way more help than you have. And I mean, I'm just afraid because when I think about it, what's going to go? I think it's going to be the new positions, because I think the compensation committee, how devastating to all of us who did all this work to
And
find
to
out we
the
can't, and to
employees
the
that
employees. that
Should
might
be
have
getting
heard.
these increases and should have gotten them a long time ago.
So, you know, so what are we losing? I mean, that's what I worry about, because honestly, that's what would be cut. And I feel that it would bother me, because I feel as if we have said now for like 2 or 3 years.
And
I
it's
mean,
not serving the community. I mean, it's
I
not,
know that.
yeah,
Because
I don't think it's in the community's best
Or
interest.
staff's interest.
Right.
And the other thing I say to Mary, I mean, my worry is we have to look out, and if you take a big chunk of that reserve to fill that gap, to keep it at the tax cap, all we have done is throw that can down the road, because next year it's going to be 8 and 10%, because there's no way you can, I mean, what Michael said is true. You cannot operate the library on the tax cap when there's no outside money, unless you can find some big donor, some big benefactor, you know, that'd be wonderful, but unlikely. It's just impossible. And so if you try to do that, the only source of money is to take more from the reserve, and all you're doing is saying, and that means that in 2 years or 3 years, we got real trouble because we are looking at an 8%, a 10%, just to afford to put the roof on, just to deal with Community Way, just to keep the staff. And I mean, I just would rather do it like this and preserve and build the reserve than I would to kick the can down the road, which feels like, I'm just worried that that's what one does.
This budget reduces us. It's a tight budget.
It is, I mean, we
It's not
made
including
cuts.
what we wanted to include. I had
At
to
the
go back.
6%.
No, we had to go
Okay.
back and
Cut some.
I had to make a lot of cuts to make this happen.
I wanted those security cameras.
Oh,
That's just.
Yeah. They've got the transits in here. No, that's a thing.
It changes my thinking that the staff wouldn't get their compensation at the tax cap. Because my assumption was that it would just come from the building of the reserves, not that it would
Yeah, it would be
touch the
some,
staff at all.
some of column A, some column B,
Yeah,
because it's not enough with the reserves. It would have to be other stuff.
Mhm.
And we probably, like she said, start with the positions that we don't have currently. That would be the easiest, quickest, least painful-ish way to do it.
First one in, or last one in.
I mean, and I just think that, I mean, that's exactly what, when you look at that, you say, well, what are you gonna do? Well, that's, you know, am I gonna prevent Marion from getting the needed? No, I'm going to take away the help you need.
Which sucks. We don't want to do that, so.
I mean, I don't know, so.
So what's your pleasure? Vote tonight or not?
I'm team vote tonight.
I can vote.
You can vote. Now, if we exceed the tax cap, we have to have at least 5 yeses. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
And we don't have.
We don't have it
Shay.
yet. Right. I don't think,
With him not being here now, does he get a vote later or?
Well,
does
he
just-
hasn't said-
He
he
voted
said
no.
he voted no.
Okay,
He
he voted no.
For anything but the tax cap.
Okay,
Right, that's why. we-
that's true, that's
So
right.
We'll just record that.
Okay,
So the 3 of us voted.
mhm.
Well,
Are you
no.
calling?
If-
To
if-
what? For
no,
what?
we call the
First, I
vote.
would need a motion.
Okay.
Okay,
I
Yeah.
would need a motion.
Well, we want to make sure it
Yep.
has the votes to pass, so I mean,
Yeah.
I'll say.
Well, if not, but the process
yeah.
to vote
Yeah.
ultimately is.
I make a motion
And a
I'll second.
For
for the
which one?
6%.
For the 6%.
I'll second that.
Oh, nice.
Okay.
Which automatically we need 5, and then it makes the vote the supermajority for the tax cap. It needs to be 60%.
Okay,
All right, so motion to exceed.
Tax cap and,
But they need to be 2 separate motions.
Yeah, so we'll make,
Then
I'll
we
make a
just-
motion to exceed the
It's
tax.
a
Lynn will
resolution,
move
a
to
resolution to
to
exceed the tax cap.
potentially exceed the
To
tax cap.
potentially exceed the tax cap. I will make that motion. Did you second that motion?
no,
Okay, so I will second that motion.
And do we need 5 votes to do that?
5 votes for that.
So we have to, you have to say who's,
So
All in favor.
anybody want to discuss it any further? If not, we take a vote. So all in favor?
Oh.
That's it.
You
So Shay is.
so I would put
Shay would
6
be,
in favor. Against.
So then I would make a motion to accept the proposal at the 6% tax levy. increase.
That one I'll second.
Afterwards, your logic.
Yeah.
At 6%.
Well, because it could have been anything over.
Yeah,
The first one could have been anything over.
right.
Oh.
I wanted
Potentially could have
specifics.
been.
No,
Yeah.
So you
may
made
exceed,
that
but you
motion
always have
to
another
exceed
vote,
to
so if
6.
it's higher
That's
than you
what I
want, you
didn't
would
know.
vote no.
Oh.
All right,
See, I
and
didn't know the
then-
whole procedure part, so,
Amanda, were you the second on?
and the
that?
second one, yes.
Now, once we made that motion, technically, we only need 4.
Okay.
But
But we hope to have 5.
I'd like to have 5. At least 5.
Can you repeat the motion again? I'm sorry. I know. I
Motion to
seconded it,
accept
but-
the proposal to exceed the, or at 6% tax cap increase.
No,
Budget.
let's say the
6%.
proposal,
Accept proposal.
Proposed 2023 budget
yeah,
with a 6% tax levy. It's not a tax levy increase, it's a tax levy. Right?
it's a budget of $2,332,682.
All right, so a motion to accept the proposed 2023.
No, yeah, this is motion to approve the budget that we will present at the public hearing.
In August.
So it
So the
can
board,
still
you will
change
still-
at that point.
And you still would be able to vote. But hopefully, any issues you have with this would be now. Because usually in August, it would only change if there was a lot of public. Because the public
Yes.
hearing is before a
Right,
board
right.
meeting, so if there was a something came to light in the public
One year
hearing.
we had some public that came in and said we weren't spending enough on the books.
Oh,
So let me go back to this first. We have a motion to potentially exceed the tax cap. That was the first
And
one.
that passed.
And that
6-1.
passed. So now the next motion is to approve the 2023 budget proposal that will be presented to the public in August with no mention of, right?
What?
I
No,
would,
that
with
we-
6%.
$2,332,682.
Right here. Is that rain?
No,
I
I'm
guess
sure.
it's 82.
I hope it's the air
The
conditioning.
total revenue.
2.33,
You're,
268.
no, the 651, you gotta add in the.
well, the public funds, right?
$5,800.
Is it this? It's 2232.
It's the number on.
682,
Oh,
682.
23.
That one,
Yeah,
yeah.
that one.
2,332,682. Because we still have to, the other piece you have to do now is figure out where to put the.
No, that's up to you.
That's up to you.
So that I don't put anything in there about the 6%. We don't really know.
No, well,
6%, I would
No,
just write
there's
6%
levy.
tax levy.
you could say that, which includes a tax levy increase of 6%. Now, this just assumes. Let's go there.
Of course.
Do they have a say? Like, can they say no?
They can say,
But
we're
if-
not gonna pay them.
If they say no, we're not paying 6% levy increase, are they saying we bow out of this altogether, or are they?
No, it's.
Or are they
It's nickel and
saying
dime.
we're paying 3%, or we're paying, like, can they name their percent?
Well, it can be a discussion and
A negotiation.
it becomes a negotiation. They're basically a negotiated contract. And the thing that they have right now is that they get equal services for their.
For their residents.
320,000, whatever it is. So if you negotiate with them, it might be, okay, yes, but you don't get all the equal services.
Hmm.
Because already it's a fraction of what each member pays. Okay, do you want to read back what?
Yes. I'd love to. Okay, motion to approve proposed they approved 2023 proposed budget of $2,332,682 that will be presented to the public in August, which includes a tax levy increase of 6%. Okay, okay. That's the
Make
motion.
that motion.
So you made the motion,
Amanda
you
will second.
I will
seconded.
second it.
Okay, so now,
Any further discussion? Okay, take a vote, all in favor? 6-1.
I kind of like that it's not unanimous. I know that it seems bad, but it just means that we're not rubber stamping and that we actually
true.
discussed it, and I feel
What
like,
a
not that you
positive way
shouldn't
to
have like, you shouldn't not always be like, you want unanimity, but it's kind of nice to know that there are different opinions and that
Oh,
they're not all
absolutely.
lockstep, and I think that's kind of heartening to see that it's
You know who's gonna be here complaining about it?
our friend who,
No,
Betty.
Bob.
oh.
Oh, tell him, you get him busy. Tell Sissy and Denise
Find him
to
a
take
golf
him
trip.
out. for a Cruise on the Hudson River.
Budget.
Okay.
Well,
Now we're
thank
back
you,
to
everyone.
Thank
Well,
you.
Thank you
Thank
for all
you.
your hard work once again.
We did the personnel, we do need a motion for the annual report, we put it off last month.
Yeah. Oh, we did. put it
That's
on.
right, we did put it off. That's right, 'cause you weren't.
Okay. Oh, that's right. Have we set enough on compensation committee?
There was a report in the
There's a
packet.
report.
Yeah, I mean, there's a report
Okay.
there, I can, yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
See report.
Okay. All right. Then the PLD annual report, you know,
It was distributed to you via email. Does anybody have any questions? We need an official vote to retroactively submit it. It's already been submitted, but if there's, if you disagree, we could take it back.
copy of.
I have one printed copy here if anyone wants it.
This is just rectifying the funds that were unbalanced as of year end, correct?
No, this is different.
No, okay, so this is every year we put together a report to the New York State Department of Library Development. So this report goes to the state library. We have 2 annual reports we need to give. One is to the comptroller, and that one still needs to be done. And one is to library development. This is the library development report. It includes financials done on a cash basis, which is different than the way we do ours. We do ours on an accrual basis, so it's not gonna match exactly like, you wouldn't be able to match it at anything exactly, because it's done on a cash basis, when things are received, when things are paid for the fiscal year 2021. It also includes statistics from our library services that we provide. How many programs we provided, how many people attended, how many books we lent, all of those things. And if you have questions about anything you are reading in this, I can answer that for you.
Okay.
And last year can even give you, if you go on the library website, you can see from this time it was probably earlier in February, probably, or March, you would see in my director's report, there were a number of questions that were raised that I put question and answer.
Okay.
So that would be, questions about what exactly is being asked here.
Okay.
Where is,
That's if you go into the trustee section under minutes and director's report. So it would be in my director's report, the time that you could probably search our website for.
last year's report?
Report. But if you can't find it and you want me to look it up for you, I can. Just let me know.
We approve this.
So you need to approve this.
Motion to approve.
I'd love to approve it.
Second.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, all in favor? 6. We should make a note that they left it around, what was
I
it?
wrote it.
It was
You wrote
8:30.
one,
Yeah. it was
Our
8:30.
time, 8:30.
I saw 8:35.
About this.
Oh, now we
Only
have
'cause you
our
had to leave 'cause you had to
policies.
Okay, policies.
Is that you?
No.
Oh.
I thought it was
I
more Jill.
just, I read the policies and I think I sent questions.
Yes, I saw that.
Yeah.
So does anybody feel like we need to hold off on any of these, the piece that
Are there any critical for you right now?
yeah, I think the request for reconsideration of library material policy is a critical policy. I understand your question about who is ultimately responsible.
Mhm.
And this is, it's semantics, but it has meaning. So I think we could go 2 different ways with this. It's always been written that the board is the ultimate responsibility because the board sets policy. But the process is that someone fills out a request for reconsideration. It comes to the director. The director responds. I've had several. They haven't had to go to you guys. I respond. I write, a written letter with defending why we've added something to our collection. It goes back to them. And if they have any sort of anything that they want to further bring up, then they would bring it to the board. Now, the policy refers to, ALA's Bill of Rights and freedom to read. Those can be found on the ALA website. We typically attach it to the policy when I give it to someone. When they do a request for reconsideration, I print all that out in one packet and give it to them. But what this does is it states that we abide by that philosophy. So if it ever came to the board afterwards, if the board was made up of individuals who did not support, if we had some anti-book people on the board, the policy says we abide by these ethics. So it's up to the board to be the final say over one person as the policy-making arm. But you're abiding by the ethics set by the American Library Association. So I think
So the
it
board
probably
is-
covers what you were trying,
Yeah.
what you were asking. I think it covers that.
So you're saying the board is also covered by the same ethics rules?
Yes,
Okay,
right, because the library,
because the library is, so by association, we are as well. Is that correct?
Right, so what we're saying is that there, in here is the process for reconsideration. And an item, we're giving we're letting people know how often they can do it. They can't just keep coming at us with the same, thing every
Right.
month. It tells us that we are not going to restrict the material during the challenge process, because that's something that happens a lot in places, is people from outside the community will challenge. And then they will take that off the shelves, and then someone else will challenge, and they go around from place to place.
Can we say that only basically the East Greenbush and Skodak residents can challenge it? What we have? So that outsiders can't just start coming in here and playing those things.
I'm not sure we could do that with library law.
If someone, so since Upper Hudson operates as a consortium, could I go to Bethlehem and say, I want this off your shelves and fill out their Yes, right?
Right now, yes, you can.
And you're trying to restrict that.
I'm
Yeah.
not sure we can.
You know,
I think library law says people can come in and out your doors.
Right, I mean, you could be a visitor, your son
Right.
could
And you
come,
could-
your
so
son
if
could
someone
come
could
here
get
with
something
your grandson.
Taken off the shelves
And
here,
be offended by something he saw and
but it could exist in Bethlehem.
doesn't even have to.
And someone could order it through interlibrary loan to come through this circulation desk.
Absolutely.
It just can't be housed in this building
If we were to ban something.
if something were to be banned. Right?
So this policy isn't clear to me in terms, like, I don't see what the results can be. You can file a complaint. It doesn't say that you could end up banning something as a result of a request.
Well,
for-
because we probably won't ban something.
Because
Because the
the ethics
don't call for banning things. It just says that we will respond because it would be very rare that we add something to our collection that is not appropriate. There is the off chance that something got by that is just like really pornography, like something that's not, that doesn't have value that we're bringing to the community, that doesn't meet our collection management policy. But if it meets our collection management policy, all we do is we tell you how it meets our policy. And that's, the letter that I sent. So this doesn't lock us into anything. It just says the director will prepare a written report. Report shall be discussed with the individual if requested. The questioner shall have the right to appeal to the board as the final review panel. The board's decision is final unless instructed by a court to do so otherwise. It has worked in the past. The only real changes to this policy are we need to add in the shared collections, because that's some fear that we have. That all requests for reconsideration of material in any of the UHLS shared collections should be directed to the Upper Hudson Library System Executive Director, because we don't have anything in our policy for shared collections. So our collection, physical collection, is owned by us. We share it, but it's not a shared collection. Our ebooks, we jointly own them together because they're leased titles. So it's a shared collection. So right now, nobody's really covered by a policy. So that's why we really do need to pass. And like, I think if we want to, we've been talking about this for a while. If we want to tweak some language over time, that's fine.
So this doesn't apply to the e-materials, ebook?
This one does.
This one does?
This one does.
Okay, that's what was
Yeah.
missing
This
before.
one does.
Gotcha.
And this policy also references our collection management policy, which used to be called material selection policy, but our request for reconsideration policy always referenced our collection management policy, even though we didn't have a collection management policy. So we need to tweak this as well so that they agree. And this also, they go hand in hand, that we're going to, the principles of access, all of these things that are so important right now and really hot topics.
And this one does say the board endorses and declares it will adhere to. So, I mean, the collections management clearly describes our obligation to accept these guidelines in anything that came to us. So it sort of protects us, because it says one person can't say, well, I agree with you. It's horrible.
Right. I mean, in here it talks about how we select things, that we have, a professional standard, which is also important because there's anybody can write right now and be published, self-published. And we get requests all the time. My email box is flooded by requests. I can't imagine what our collection and development librarians are getting. So we want to make sure that there's a process for that. So we can tell people, this is how we choose that we're adding something to our collection. So that's all in here. includes reputation and quality of writing and balance and but also things like statement on minor access. This is an ALA statement. We had a lot of debate about this several years ago, and we moved in this direction of really valuing this, but it's very easy with a turnover in board that you cannot value these things anymore. So we should have them in our policies. The board acknowledges that the responsibility for monitoring a minor's access to all library items and resources rests with the minor's parent or legal guardian. That is a tenet of our profession. And that's in here. It also talks about how do we regularly withdraw items? This is not banning. This is, we have to weed things for space, for, accuracy, all of those things. Condition, relevance, and then it talks about the shared collections. How do we add things to a shared collection? Who's in charge of what, and how do we whose responsibility is it? So this is really, they're both very similar and they don't really change the focus at all from what we have always had. It just tweaks it to add the
Brings it
shared
down a little more.
collections. Yeah.
Okay. Do we want to vote on this tonight?
So you're gonna change because you have it, you refer to material selection policy, and that's not the policy anymore in both of these things. So are you gonna have somebody proofread it, or do you want me to send you those things?
Yes, if you see, I can have somebody proofread it, but if you see something that has already been missed, please send it to me.
So good.
Well, it jumps, those things jump at me. I don't know.
I have someone on staff who has an eagle eye too. I have to send everything to her. The problem is, she can't really be my personal assistant. She's a department head.
Okay. You want to do both at once or?
Yeah, what's your pleasure?
They go hand in
Yeah.
hand, might as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Well, somebody make a motion.
I'll make the motion. Second.
Okay. So Mary, it's a motion to approve whatever the,
Request for reconsideration of library material policy and collection management policy, which will replace the former material selection policy.
and is there a version dated something?
Got 5/5/22. 5/5/22.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor?
Wait, first, who's the first? Who's the
It was
motion?
Amanda, then Cammy.
So we're going to approve them with edits as discussed or something, the policies
As amended.
as amended.
We can amend it.
Okay.
You don't mind, so you can get my.
Okay, all in favor? That takes care of that. The, time. You want to give a report or should we just trust what's in the packet?
I implore you to read my report. So it's worth writing.
I
But
read
if you have any
it.
questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Okay.
One quick thing.
Oh, no,
Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead.
No, mine is not important at all. Go ahead.
We have had a tremendous turnout for summer reading. It's been
Aw.
incredible. It's a little overwhelming because we're seeing pre-pandemic numbers coming in.
I was stunned even just walking in, was it today or yesterday? I mean, it was stunning. Like, I
Like
said,
all of a
look at
sudden,
all
what-
these kids. You know, I said, and they had
Well,
piles of books and.
We've had like 70 kids came through and registered
So
yesterday.
cute. My son
And
registered
summer
today,
reading.
so that was
Wow.
And
Part of
and
what I
they
was gonna
were, I
say.
mean, they had 4 children staff in there and they were, it was just one after the other, and they had teen,
For the help.
they've got the teen,
My son was
Volunteers
here
and
for the
whatever.
first shift,
Oh, he was?
the 10 o'clock shift. And I came to pick him up and his friend, and I was like, oh my God, it was busier than pre-pandemic. Like it was crazy. And he was like, okay, you want pink, you want this? Like it was intense back there. It was good, which is awesome. Like it really on so many levels.
Yeah, I wanted to pass along a compliment about the decor for the children's room. When I saw the note there, my husband was absolutely stunned by
Yeah,
what they
no,
did.
no,
with
like,
the
one
wall.
last thing.
He asked me to take a
Charlie.
quick picture of it.
Chugging along. We recently decided to accept puzzles and donations, so we're gonna be selling those. So yeah, we're gonna do it. People are gonna rubber band them and just put a note in the box what pieces are missing. So have a general sense if they're gonna get 1,000-piece puzzles with like 998 pieces. And that's, we had the meeting this week. Yeah, just chugging along. We got a good turnout from the Hannaford bag program. We were surprised to see that. That's not really. Keep on, yeah.
Are you still looking for leadership?
Still are looking for a VP and a comms press person.
So our outgoing department head, Elizabeth, lives in East Greenbush and has, she wants to get settled in her new job, but she has expressed interest and, she said she would love to join the Friends
Okay, yeah.
Good.
and really help out.
Wow.
So which would be a huge
That'd be
asset to
awesome.
you guys.
Definitely.
Mhm.
Okay.
Don't put
Anybody have
that in the
anything
mess,
else?
you might scare her.
Did you want me to
away.
put my thing in the old business or the new business?
You can do it now.
Okay, so I reached out at work because I work for a law firm to find out if we could help with reviewing the director's contract. They said that that's not something that they handle, but I was given 2 other firms that do this type of business pro bono. One is Barclay Damon. They're Albany, Buffalo, Syracuse, they're all over. They work in insurance mostly, but she said they do a lot of that pro bono. The other name I was given was Whiteman, Osterman,
Oh,
and
yeah.
Hannah. So
Big.
she said that those are probably the 2 most likely candidates to reach out. MHM does not do this though, this particular
No,
thing.
I-
So
Liz works there. Yeah, Liz.
Yeah.
Paralegal there, and we've used them for library things in the past.
so she,
They're very familiar
yeah,
with
so
it.
she seemed
Well,
to think
yeah,
they would be
board
somebody who
member
could
from
help.
there.
She leaned more towards
From
Barclay,
there.
but
Oh, really?
Oh, really?
What was
Not
it,
fine.
Barclay?
Barclay Damon, so BARCLAY, and then Damon.
Dash Damon or just
It's 2 names, so it's Barclay Damon.
He's the one.
like a comma in between?
No,
No,
just
no
like,
comma.
Oh, just 2 names.
Yep. Just like Martin Harding Mazzotti.
yeah.
Okay, so Barclay, DAMON, did you
Yep.
say?
And the other one's Whiteman, Osterman, and Hannah.
Okay.
So, I don't know if you need to let them know that MHM referred you, but that's who referred. I don't, since it's pro bono, I assume there's no fees involved, but yeah, I don't know how that all part works, so. Just figured, so that's all I have, but.
Okay.
Port Hudson has a new slate of officers. I don't know if it's, so
Okay.
it's not Antonio, president. No, yeah. So Susan Keitel, president, Jackie Marino, vice president, Yvette Terplack, secretary, and Fred Wobrock is still the treasurer. So we had to have a special vote to
Yeah.
let him continue on, but everyone voted for it.
Well, I think he
Keep
was the
that going.
treasurer as long as I was.
Yeah, keeps going. He does a great job.
Cammy, could you send me their names?
Yeah.
In email?
Yeah, no, I will. Yep.
Thank you.
Mhm.
I don't think that the lawyer thing needs to be in our minutes, honestly. That's you just bringing information
Yeah.
to us.
After all that spelling.
Do you want to give an update on the little?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so quickly, the 2 little library posts are in.
Yay. Where?
All right. Okay, one is over Okay, right behind Town Hall. So here's Town Hall, like here's the back of Town Hall.
By the parking lot.
Right, here's the parking lot.
Mhm.
So if you go down the road,
Mhm. Toward.
it's like a dead end street and then is the start of that path. And then there's a sign there that's talks about Hampton Manor. It's right next to the
Oh, how
sign.
wonderful. That's
So it's
a great
perfect.
spot.
And then the house that's like literally across the street, we just kind of like did this turnaround. And when I went there with my husband, the wife came out with the kids and we said, oh, you know, we're just gonna park here for a second. We were explaining what we're gonna do. And the kids were like, oh, I love that. Oh, I said, oh, you're gonna be one of my helpers. You're gonna have to help me, you know, with the books. I will. So then when we came back with Jamie, because I was showing him, you know, the sites, we did this turnaround again and behind Jamie's car. So I drove and then Jamie was the husband. So he comes home and he goes, can I ask what you're doing? Like, he was like, he said, you know, people just like park in their driveway, like
Oh,
like
yeah.
people have no, you know,
That's gonna be-
sense.
Might be an issue.
Well, he said most people park down there but people have like parked kind of right there. Like, not necessarily in the driveway, but. So he said, oh, no, don't worry, like, you know, we'll make sure it's, you know, still standing, it has books in it, like, you know, that is gonna be great.
Call if there's a problem.
Yes, when we go back. So it's not actually in, just the posts are in. The other post is right by, the suggestion, right by Janae. So if you walk, you know, right by the back of Janae, you walk there, there's like a ceramic bench. And then across is another sign all about Janae and how Janae used to be, I didn't know, like Columbia High School was Janae, all right.
Janae was Columbia High
Who
School.
knew? Anyway.
I didn't know.
So the post is over there, right in the middle between like the pole and the bench. And
So is that right by where they're putting the bike shop in, that little?
I don't know where they're putting a bike shop.
The house on the corner across from.
That's gonna be a bike
Food
shop? Oh, I didn't know that.
The house on the corner of what street?
Wait, that's
That's like that
turned into a-
architectural, like the
Architectural house,
looking
that like
house.
mid-century
Yeah,
modern.
right
I
across
love that
from
house.
Friendly's.
I do too.
I wanted to buy it when it was up for sale last. It was way out of my price
interesting. It's a
range.
shame that like,
Just a cool
It's-
So
kind of
that's
took
where it
over.
is. It's near that.
it's
That
across
house.
behind,
Friendly's.
yes, it's
Oh,
right.
superb.
The old Friendly's.
And,
It's a
and
great
Jamie,
spot, especially for-
Yeah, it's like right across
It's gonna
from
be
the
a
old
cafe
Friendly's,
bike shop,
basically.
so.
Okay. Which is
Be
also turning into a
meandering and
brewery.
pick out a book.
all right.
That's
Jamie doesn't want any money.
Oh, that's so nice.
I know. So I said, come on. And he said, no. He goes, didn't really cost me that much. I really like doing it. And like,
Can he
That's very
rewrite a nice
generous.
article?
We
and
could
then-
definitely do that, but maybe,
Maybe something else.
I know,
Maybe
we
get him
gotta-
like a gift certificate.
I was
to
gonna
just, like,
say,
a
like-
local restaurant or something.
yeah, like
nice idea.
Nick's or what's that tree?
Chris
Mike or
Pinoli
something,
or-
or Chris Pinoli, yeah, something. I mean, we can figure something out. But, yeah, so, and then they're getting registered. So we decided to get them actually
good.
registered with the little library. So we can call it a little library and it will have the emblem of both the Friends and the East Greenbush Library, but they'll also, and then once they're registered with the Little Library Association nationally, they do little promos, like they'll feature different, you know, little libraries. So we might actually get some press. So that was, that's good. So that's that. Wonderful.
Okay.
I love everything about this project. I just
It'll
have to
be,
say.
they're very cute. They're
So do
they're
we
really
know when
cute.
it's going up?
Not yet, no.
What is
I
that
saw an email
contingent
from-
upon Jamie or?
I think so, yeah.
Okay, what's next?
Sorry?
I saw an email from Jamie. yesterday.
Susan wanted to know measurements so she could send it to the little library to register and then get the little emblems set up and stuff. So she just needed dimensions.
Anybody have anything else?
That's
Good thing
Trying to
we
see
don't-
No meeting next week.
my husband.
Is the election still going on? or
No,
is it-
they
they're
left.
done?
I saw
Wow,
the
we have
list.
outlasted the election. I
Oh,
said,
no.
sure, I'll lock up.
I usually have to wait after our meetings. Amazing.
All right.
Anybody have anything else? If
Well,
not,
thank
I will
you.
entertain the most famous motion.
I would like to make it tonight.
You earned that.
Get me out of here.
I'll say.
You have your whole presentation set for the. you gotta-
Oh, your
you gotta
first-
shorten it.
I will shorten it. I'm definitely shortening it. It's gonna be half of
Thank
one.
you all.
It's gonna start with $5.
Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
When are the next?
Hey, will you have the
When's
same
the
name
next
when you
meeting?
come back?
August, the beginning of. like, the
August
select
4th.
board.
I never
August
see mine.
4th, our committee
Did
meeting,
you know that my husband's
August
name is
9th,
Harrison?
7 PM.
So if I
Public
had.
Hearing
name
7:30
Harris,
board
which is my
meeting.
mom.
Okay, I will not be at that, but I will.
Mine.
Oh, the first one, August 4th.
Every Thursday, our committee meeting. Harris.
Just make that your. Face.
Several.
I know.
Oh, God, I can't. Oh, thank
There's a packet, but does he need a packet?
No, they're
This
run.
packet?
What is that? Oh, yeah,
You
yeah,
need a
yeah.
packet to run.
This stuff needs to stay with the.
Okay.
I have it
Leave?
Monday, August
Okay, so I
1st.
won't see you till. Oh,
No,
Did we change the
I-
committee meetings from the Thursday to, from Monday to Thursday in August?
I noticed it isn't, it's
So it says
listed,
4th.
in this one, the date is Thursday.
sorry,
But it's
I
first.
didn't double check.
It's
it.
the
It's really
Monday.
the first.
It's the Monday.
Oh,
Okay, I'm sorry.
I changed it in my calendar. I'm
good,
glad
very
you
good.
asked.
Okay.
I just.
I mean, if you wanted
I
to be
did
the fourth, we can, but.
No. the first is fine.
So are the times wrong too?
I'll be your first one.
Right?
Yeah.
I can do it.
All right.
I think there's 30 lines on there, so. All right. It's the same as last year.
Okay, hold on.
So our meeting is August
First.
versus 4th. Yes. So admin is 5 to 6 and service is 6:30 to 7:30.
Can I just ask, because it also says it's Labor Day is our next one, or maybe not Labor Day. I don't know. It's a very funny day in September. It is Labor Day.
Yeah.
I think I got a call, Kevin.
September 5th,
I haven't,
the library is closed. Oh, we need to change that one.
Kevin just takes them up there. and-
So the one for September, do we want that to be on Thursday or do we want it to be on Monday?
I won't be here either of those days. I would have been, the board meetings, I don't know.
Oh, the board meeting's on the 20th. so why don't we just
September,
do the
like
following
I
Monday?
purposely scheduled this trip so I could leave right after that admin committee, and then I realized probably I'm gonna have an admin committee on a holiday.
Are we talking about September then? Okay.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I'm just not around because I leave next morning and I'm back for like 10 days.
number 12.
I mean, I could do it by
Are we talking board
The
or?
5th and the
The
12th.
admin
committee.
committee,
Oh,
or maybe I'll just.
What dates did
I don't
you
need
serve?
service committee that month. We don't have to go every month.
Oh, it's on Labor Day.
So August 5th, we're switching it to.
August
I mean,
4th to the
August-
1st.
August
I'm sorry,
1st.
September 5th.
No, September.
To
Oh.
September 12th.
That was a cute
So
little.
That's the day
August,
before the
but
budget.
August is going to the first.
I don't know how I can't get,
Oh,
I have to have.
August
Copy.
1st, Monday, August 1st.
That was a good catch. Thank you for that.
That's a
No,
really
that
good
was,
catch.
that was Katie.
Yeah,
Very
Katie
good
put-
catch.
And
I just
then
had multiple.
August
items, so
9th.
We're doing 2 in 1 week,
19th
so.
is the public hearing and the board meeting.
It's just
Right.
not long enough.
And then in September, you don't want to do the meetings on the 12th because it's the budget hearing next day. Is that what you just said?
No, but.
No.
Or budget elections.
There you go.
So when did you want to switch the committee meetings? They're on Labor Day right now.
Well, it's fine. This is labor, isn't it?
So how about either, sir, I'm gonna propose Thursday, September 1st, Thursday, September 8th, or Monday, August 29th.
Oh, you know what?
Because it's a
Not-
five.
Not the 29th, it's my husband. Not
Okay.
that he doesn't care.
I
Yeah.
will, if we're doing September,
Let's just September 1st. It's a
Can
Thursday.
we figure it out when we get closer? I'm just realizing.
Yeah.
Like, I gotta drop a kid off at college.
Right.
I don't
Yeah.
have that in my work calendar yet.
I'm going to Hilton Head
It's kind of
again.
important.
So I'll just say September.
When are you in
Where's
Hilton
she
Head?
going? Reschedule.
What?
I'm going to Hilton Head.
Where's she
When?
going?
I'm going to
Jill?
November.
Yeah,
Nia's going to
we're
the University of
going
Bridgeport.
The month of September
Connecticut.
again,
Nice.
And
like we did last year.
Luke's daughter's going to
All right, so
there.
leave it alone. We know
We
the,
need a zip.
we know the
code.
August, that's all we're knowing right
That's
now.
all So we need to
We'll know
reschedule.
other things at a later date.
Yes, we'll figure out.
I'll change the August dates in there.
Do you need something signed?
Yes. Should be up over there.
Okay, it's Monday, August.
All right. All right, so I will leave this stuff on my desk for when I come back. We're gonna need to schedule
So this is my
our September
signature.
meetings.
Yes, and if it's okay with you, well, I will, there's no problem. I'll work with Susan to get this PowerPoint put together, and we will just email it when you get back. Don't even look at it till you get back. I'll be gone, but I'll be back in time before the meeting, I'll be back at the end of July. And then we could just sit, and we could say, yeah, let's.
Thanks so much.
Of course. So I'll get it. Have a wonderful vacation. You
Yeah.
deserve
Yes.
it.
Yeah.
So we're not meeting then?
No.
Are you gonna miss it?
Are you gonna miss
We're meeting
I
on the
thought that I
6th.
was,
We're meeting, no.
we're meeting the night before my wedding.
Fun.
We're meeting the morning after.
At your destination.
Rehearsal dinner.
We'll be there.
Yeah, really, yeah. You guys are the best.
Oh, they are the best. Is it Vineyard, right?
Okay, Mary's gonna sign. Mary, you're gonna sign it?
Oh, yeah.
You've never been?
Never
Martha's
I've never, or Nantucket.
You know, my relatives are the my ancestors are the Coffins.
Oh.
Wanted to go a few years ago.
So when's the last time
They all were Nantucket whalers.
island.
Well, they actually owned the lumber yard on Nantucket.
Wow.
Anticipate like.
Yeah, this year you
even
So we-
just a brainstorm.
Us Vineyarders have a, you know,
So.
a friendly competition with Nantucket. There's,
I mean, I was on, we camped on Martha's Vineyard last weekend that John F. Kennedy. And Carolyn was sat there.
Yeah.
you were
On Martha's Vineyard.
wow.
And all of a sudden, we were camping and all of a sudden,
So Charlie's.
it was just,
Thanks so much.
you know, like it was just CNN and, you know.
Oh my God.
East Greenbush Community Library, Penn.
So in college, this is weird, because in college, I went to Hobart William Smith.
Oh, I didn't know.
And yep, and my dad lost his job while I was in college. It was like, I thought I was going, you know, they went from paying for college to suddenly I'm in big trouble. And so when Lauren was died, she went to William Smith and I got the scholarship.
Wow,
Small world, huh?
that's really small world.
It was crazy.
It was so sad.
It's so sad, because I mean, I'm a
Like I met
twin.
her family,
thought,
and, you know, because it was
oh.
right when she died. I was in college. So, what'd you say? You were what?
No, I
Were
mean,
they
just-
twins?
Yeah, and they died in the plane together.
I know.
And I said, I mean, I just thought, how could a parent deal with losing
So heartbreaking.
children?
God, I couldn't
And
imagine.
that's,
I can't imagine.
Oh, my
so
God.
the whole thing was so horrifying, and all I remember, Laura, I don't remember what year it was, but she was like 8, and she kept saying, I want to be on CNN. And I said, you can't be on CNN. You don't even know. Who's John Kennedy Jr.? I don't know, but I want to be on CNN.
That's really cute. Oh, are we still live? Oh, geez.